This reed organ was built in 1870 by Jewett and Goodman Organ Company. Flat-top organs were fairly common between 1860 and 1875. This one has two sets of reeds, one sounding at normal pitch and one sounding an octave higher. From the wear on the treadles, it appears this organ has seen a lot of service. The interior was fairly clean. It needed some dusting and vacuuming, but otherwise the action appeared to be in fairly good condition. With the upper action removed, it's time to start rebuilding the air reservoir and the bellows. The exhausters were quite different in that they had cardboard ribs and leather hinges, and on the corners they had leather gussets. Of course, all of this needed to be taken apart and replaced. With all the old leather and bellows cloth removed and the old glue removed, it's ready to clean up the boards. New bellows cloth was wrapped around the reservoir and new leather flap valves were installed. The old cardboard ribs were saved and were used as templates for making new ribs. New leather hinges were glued onto the ribs and then also in their proper position on the boards. New leather gussets were cut for the corners and glued into position. Now it's time to start working on the upper action. The reed bed material was originally corduroy, but it will be replaced with felt. Everything was stripped down and cleaned up. Minor repairs were made to the front of the reed cells where needed. Then the reed pan was flipped over and started working on the pallets. Again, everything was stripped down and cleaned up. The guide pins were all removed, cleaned, and reinstalled. The felt and leather on the pallets needed to be replaced. Here you can see new felt and new leather being installed on the pallets. The springs were cleaned, the pallets reinstalled along with their springs. New leather acts as a seal between the reed pan and the foundation board. The reeds were carefully cleaned using an ultrasonic cleaner. New felt was put on in place of the old corduroy fabric, and then the clean reeds are reinstalled. New leather and felt were needed on the mutes. The leather and felt had to be precisely aligned so that it would provide a good seal with the reeds. Notice the nice shiny hinges as the mutes are reinstalled. And now on to the keyboard. With all the keys removed, we found some writing on the keyframe. Someone had cleaned and repaired this in July 4th, 1924. The ebony keys were cleaned, black shellac applied, and then a final coat of clear shellac applied over the top. The ivory keys were cleaned and then set in the sun for several days to whiten them. With the keyboard reinstalled, it was set on the tuning bench ready to be tuned. Some parts of the case had seen some water damage. This all needed to be cleaned and repaired. The goal was to preserve as much of the original stain and finish as possible. The case was disassembled as much as possible for cleaning and restoration. The lower action and foundation board were reinstalled in the case. And of course, new fabric on the treadles. The upper action could now be installed on the foundation board. Notice all the bright, shiny brass hardware. This was carefully cleaned prior to reinstallation. With the installation of the keyboard, the organ can finally be played in the shop. 3 of the 4 finials on the case were missing, so I made new ones using the one surviving finial as a pattern. The 3 new ones were stained to match the case, and then reinstalled on the organ. Some of the carved molding had been damaged. Notice the upper left of the opening by the treadles. This was patched using epoxy-based wood filler. When dry, the wood filler was carved to match the rest of the molding and then sanded to match the original. Adding stain and shellac completes the repair. The lattice work under the music desk was cracked all the way across the width of the organ and pieces were missing. The edges of the crack were cleaned and carefully glued back together using a lot of clamps. New pieces were cut from old walnut stock and glued into place. After careful staining and refinishing, it looks as good as new. Here's the restored organ 6 weeks later.